A couple of videos back, we ran a lab where we removed a successor from our EIGRP routing table, and it was so quick. Remember that great cutover, the feasible successor that we had for that particular route? It was already in the routing table before we could run show IP route EIGRP again. It's that fast, and we love EIGRP's quick cutover and the fact that those feasible successors are actually calculated in advance of being needed. What if there is no feasible successor to cut over to? Uh-oh. Well, it's not just enough for the router to say, uh-oh. We really should go out and start asking some of our neighbors, hey, do you have this route that I just lost? And that's another purpose of EIGRP's algorithm Dual. Dual calculates the route metrics, but it also queries neighboring routers in the situation that we're looking at here, where the successor is gone, but there is no feasible successor. There is no backup route. Now, the first thing that Dual is going to do is mark the route in question as active. And boy, that sounds great, right? Hey, our routes are active. That's what we want, right? Well, actually, it's not, because active doesn't refer to the route being actively available or actively used for routing data. What active refers to is that EIGRP is actively calculating the route. And that means the route in question cannot be used for routing. And if you look at the topology table, which I just happen to have right here, you can see that I've got A highlighted, but you'll also not see the letter A anywhere else in this table, because these routing table codes that we're looking at here in the topology table, of course, they're different than the routing table codes. And we have P next to all of them. P stands for passive. And that sounds like something we don't want, but actually what we want in EIGRP is all our routes to be passive and not to have them active, because passive means that right now Dual is actually passive as far as all these routes are concerned. They're all stable routes, they're available for routing, and life is good. That's what we actually want. Now, when we have a situation like we have on the board right now, successor route is lost, there is no feasible successor, Dual then sends a query out to its own neighbors. And the query is simply one neighbor asking another, hey, do you know how to get to this network? Because I just lost my route to it. Do you have a valid path to route X, whatever destination that happens to be? Now, if that first queried router doesn't have such a route, that's not the end of the process. Dual does not give up that easily, my friends. What happens is the process is going to continue until a queried router either says, hey, I got that route you need and here it is, or the routers being queried run out of other routers to ask. And routes come out of active state so quickly. This process usually happens so fast that it's actually hard to spot one in the table. I could make a situation like this up, and by the time we looked at the topology table, they'd already be passive again. And this is definitely a situation where passive is better than active. So again, quickly reviewing your table here, what we want is to see that capital P next to our routes for passive and not see that capital A for active. Now, there are some other packet types here we're going to look at the beginning of the very next section, this update, query, reply. Doesn't hurt to know those codes, but there's something here called stuck inactive. And we'll discuss this a little bit in the next section. But stuck inactive, and this is more of a real world note than an exam note, troubleshooting SIA routes is much more of an art form than it is a science. I don't care what document you have in front of you that tells you otherwise. Some of the documents I've seen out there can kind of make it seem like, oh, it's pretty simple, you just do this and that's the end of it. It's not always the end of it. We'll discuss the SIA routes a bit in the next section, but this concludes our EIGRP fundamental review. And in the very next section, we're going to delve deeper, first off, into these EIGRP packet types. These updates, queries, replies, we need to know what's going on with those, which ones are what we call reliable and which ones are unreliable, and then we'll branch out from there. So I'll see you in the next section.